Guillermo Mash here, and we're covering the Homeward Street Journal edition March and April, and we've got the North California state legislation honors the dignity of transgender prisoners, and I have one of the co-authors of this piece, Coral Feigin, who works for Western Regional Advocacy Project, and he's going to give us some insights on this wonderful piece that was in the paper. So welcome to KZFR, Coral.
So my name is Coral, and I'm the organizer with the Western Regional Advocacy Project. And we're working on this bill, which is SB 310, or the Name and Dignity Act for Incarcerated Trans People. And this bill is authored by Senator Atkins this year. And we also just got word that it's going to be co-authored by Senator Weiner and Senator Eggman. And so what SB 310 does is it changes the process for trans people who are in prison who are trying to access a legal name and gender marker change. And when I say gender marker, I'm talking about the letter that's on your identification document, so either an M or an S. And so what currently happens for trans people who are in prison who are trying to change their name and gender is that they need to submit a request to the warden. And what happens is that they're either flat out denied or they're just put into so many circles of bureaucratic circles that they give up on the process. There are only 3 people in the whole state of California that have ever successfully changed their name and gender while incarcerated, and 2 of those people were because of a lawsuit. So there's only 1 person who's actually successfully gone through the process, and everyone else has been denied. What SB 310 does is it changes the process to be more similar to the process that trans people go through on the outside. And so what that means is that it goes through the superior court system. So a trans person who is incarcerated could just petition to the superior court to change their name and gender without having to involve the warden. And there would likely be some amount of notice that's given to the prison system that someone is changing their name, but otherwise it would be up to the court's discretion about whether or not someone would be approved for a name and gender marker change.
Gosh, it seems so logical, Coral. I don't even understand that's why that's not the current process, that even though you're incarcerated, you're applying for a social service, my term, you should go through whatever that process is and not have to go through a prison process for something like a name change. Is there some dynamic to this name change that I'm missing?
I think it's a few different things. So one thing is that trans people, for the most part, so trans women are mostly held in men's prisons, and trans men are mostly held in women's prisons. There's a few exceptions to that. And trans people in prison face all kinds of types of violence, including physical and emotional and sexual violence, pretty much on the daily. Most trans people are held in protected custody, which is the same part of the prison that is used for people who are locked up on sexual crimes or for snitches, or sometimes are held in solitary confinement or ADSEG or other ways of blocking people out of contact with other people. And the best case scenario is that someone would have a single cell, but that's pretty rare. So all of those conditions are kind of just commonplace for trans people in prison. And so what we're seeing from working with folks in prison is that it seems like denying people to have a name and gender marker change is just kind of another aspect of that punishment and another aspect of that violence. And the other piece is that there is some amount of fear from CDCR that they would have to train their guards to actually appropriately address trans people, because if someone legally changes their name, then you can't just call them by whatever name that you want. You have to call them by the name that is legally their name. So that would require guards to actually address trans people for who they are, which is something that they don't really want to do because the prison system doesn't even really acknowledge that trans people are held inside of their facilities.
Sounds a little bit maybe a control issue too. I mean, the prison environment a lot of times is given the stereotype of being, we're in charge, we're going to tell you what to do. Is there any dynamic around that? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely is an aspect of the control over people's bodies that the prison system thrives off of. And it's also just a way to dehumanize people. As it currently is, if you're locked up and your name is something that's very different from your gender presentation, it's just a way to harm people, to call them by a different gender and a different name, you know?
Yeah. So where are we at in the process, man? Maybe we'll wrap this up and kind of say SB 10, State Bill 310. Where are you at in the process as far as how far along is it, hearing-wise and stuff?
So it's been introduced, and the first hearing is in the Public Safety Committee on the Senate side, and that is on March 28th. And then we're also going to be heard in the Judiciary Committee on the Senate side in late April.
Now, are these open to the public? Are you going to have like rallies and stuff that we might want to promote to try to get some folks down there, or what's the scope of that?
Yeah, they're definitely open to the public. For these hearings, it's just someone can give a Me Too, so it just means that you come up and you say your name and the organization you work for and whether or not you're opposing or supporting the bill. So that's definitely an option for people who want to support the bill while it's in its hearing. I don't think we have any rallies planned yet, but we're also still trying to do some of the logistics, figuring out the logistics for it, so you can stay tuned for more updates.
I shall, Coral, and give all my friends there in the office my best, and thank you so much for being on Without a Radio program.
Yeah, thank you.